For people who want to know what is the Keith Andrew Network, the whole point of my talk show is to show you that even with having a learning disability, I can still amount to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities to never give up and prove people wrong. Prove to them that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be, so prove them. Still amount to something. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith Andrew, and you're watching the one and only Keith Andrew Network. That's available on all social medias. If you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to the Keith Andrew Network. Make sure to follow the hashtag. Follow hashtag Keith Andrew Network. With that being said, we have a very special guest today on the show. We might have two. But as of right now, we have one. He is an upcoming professional actor. Won't say who it is, but you will hear from him when we come back on this commercial break.
This is Robert Santorelli, and I was just interviewed by Keith Andrew of the Keith Andrew Network, and he is an inspiration. Not only was he an inspiration to me, but he is an inspiration to anyone out there with a disability. I suggest you follow him.
Thank you for being with us.
A pleasure to be here with you, Keith.
No, the honor's all mine. So the first thing we're going to start off with is a new segment of the Keith Andrew Network called Icebreakers. So I'm going to ask you some easy questions, then we can go to the hard-hitting ones. First one I want to ask you is tell our audience a little bit about yourself and the type of work that you do.
Okay, so born and raised in New York, so in Manhattan. So I was always around the theater, Broadway, off Broadway. Went to a technical school, which influenced my career in IT. Which I currently still have, and I work, and then we'll get into the acting in a minute. But I think this warrants some conversation. I'm IT manager for a company that is sustainable, and it's I won't mention the company name, but it is the only company in the country that extracts carbon dioxide from the environment. Reducing carbon emissions and hopefully saving the world, or at least that's what a lot of the my coworkers like to think. So that's what I do outside of acting.
Now, I do have a whole list of acting questions, but you did hit the hammer on the head for one of the questions I want to ask you at the very end. But I want to ask you now: do you believe in climate change?
Very much so. I mean, my day job, my career, is totally devoted to it, and I work with an unbelievably talented crew of people who are dedicated to that cause. So we are probably the leading company in the country to fight climate change. I would love to mention the name of the company, but I think at this point I would need to get permission first. But if you Google it, and you could probably figure it out.
No, absolutely. Now let's go to the acting part of the show, and then you will see on the bottom of the screen that will now say acting. First question I want to ask you is, what makes you different from the competition?
What makes me different from the competition? Well, to be honest, it was a stroke of luck. I'm passionate for the movies, and I'm passionate for a particular type of movie, which I'm going to be casting along with Tom Sizemore, Donna Lee Hensing, and some other talented cast members. But it was always the mob movies that caught my attention. Goodfellas, A Bronx Tale, Donnie Brasco, of course, Godfather. And my role in this movie is it's a well written script, and I pretty much get to play myself. So I get to play a wisecracking gangster from New York who comes down to North Carolina, and it's a North meets South kind of comedy. And it's directed by Denny Ann Giambrone. Also, I believe co-directed by Robert J. Fox, Michael J. Fox's brother, and there's a whole lot of talent in here, and I really have high hopes for this movie. So, my involvement in it was a stroke of luck.
It's funny you should mention you work with Michael J. Fox's brother. Hey, maybe if you're interested, maybe you would like to put a good word in. It's like, hey, I work with someone. I was interviewed by someone with disabilities, and I know.
Well, yes, right. Right, but honestly, okay, if I can segue away from these subjects a little bit into what you do, let me tell you, as an IT professional of 25 years, I looked at the way you market yourself, and it's impressive. You understand Instagram, YouTube, you understand hashtags, and you're actively promoting yourself. So I mean, even though you say you do have disability, I believe you, but you're one talented person with disabilities coming from someone who's been a professional in this field for 25 years.
Well, one thing about the Keith Andrew Network, it is uncensored, freedom of speech and self-expression. So you can express yourself however you want.
But, awesome, good to know.
No, absolutely. And it's funny to mention that because people are like, when they think about people with disabilities, they don't think about someone who has or capable of having their own podcast talk show. Or thanks to you, well, actually, we can look up real fast. I have a whole binder of these. You're episode 954. So when you think about people with disabilities, you don't say, oh, hey, he has a disability and he's done 954 of these. It's absolutely, for me, breaking that label of showing you that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be. So prove to them you can still amount to something. And that's the whole stereotype I'm breaking.
I learned at an early age not to judge because I was absolutely surprised and awestruck by a student I had in college. We were in math, and I don't know the disability he had, but he had a severe disability. And my first thought is, why is this kid in my class? This is an advanced math class. What is he doing here? How did he slip through the cracks? This kid led the class in math. I couldn't believe it. When the professor read off the scores, I thought, no way. Kid was a genius. I was blown away. And I remember saying to myself after that, I'll never misjudge someone who I believe is disabled again, because if I would have opened my mouth, I would have looked like a fool.
But, it's always better to keep your mouth shut. And what was it? If someone thinks you're stupid, it's always better to keep your mouth shut and prove them wrong. I'm really bad at it. I know the expression. I forgot the expression. But you know the expression I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm looking at my card and trying to think at the same time. But while we're on the subject, as you mentioned, that student, besides that one person, have you worked with people with disabilities, and are you willing to coach people with disabilities?
There is, and I can't mention the name, but there is a kid. I'm trying not to pinpoint him. That once again, I know has some sort of disability, but absolutely has my heart, and fooled me to a degree where I thought he wasn't able to speak. well, he does have some issues with that. But however, he understands. Now, I don't understand disabilities. I really don't. But okay, so getting back to this kid, I was amazed that he understood everything that I said. I taught him how to use an iPad. It took me 10 seconds, and he was off to the races with it. And I thought, wow, boy, kind of misjudged this one too. But yeah. So I don't know. I think that there are often times, and it's a shame, but there are often times that people with disabilities are misjudged.
Well, you're right. I'll give you an example. When I spend time with my niece, when I was her age, I used to play Sega, Super Nintendo. I like video games where you actually physically hold a controller in your hand, A
Right.
button, B button. And she wants to teach me how to play Roblox. And I recently do a little plug for Roblox for people out there. Available on Google and the Apple App Store. It is free, of course. Of course, you have to pay from certain features. But she was showing me how to play, and I'm looking at this Roblox, and I'm like, this is overwhelming. I don't know what the hell I'm staring at. But she's sitting there, she's whizzing back and forth, and she's 8. So my mom made a joke like, you're saying an 8-year-old can figure out how to play Roblox, and you're 34 and you don't know how to figure out how to play Roblox?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But it's also a generational thing. We didn't have iPads, when we were growing up.
No, we didn't. We didn't have iPads. And I'm probably a little older than you, so we didn't have smartphones. We had rotary phones. You put your finger in and a number, and then another number, and yeah.
Actually, I remember those. Those things were great, and they were heavy too.
They were bulletproof. Right. Right.
The one thing I remember is if you're ever in a heated conversation and you slam down the phone, you can actually make a ring. I don't know if you ever did that.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay, so you do remember? Yeah.
So do you ever question?
That's the way it was.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go
So the
ahead.
next one I want to ask you is, what is your claim to fame?
My claim to fame. Okay. Greatest day of my life. Italy. I had lunch with Luciano Pavarotti, and later on that night had dinner with Renata Tebaldi. Lunch with Luciano Pavarotti at his horse ranch in I forget that little city. It's in Italy, but it's not part of Italy. And then dinner with Renata Tebaldi in Rimini, Italy. They're both no longer with us, as you know. But that was probably the one of the biggest days of my life. Yeah.
Have you ever met any famous people?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I grew up near Johnny Williams, also known as Johnny Roast Beef. Played in Goodfellas. Okay, he was the guy with the Cadillac. But the guy says, but it's under my mother's name. And Robert De Niro, get it out of here, get it out of here. Okay. And there's an up and comer who I didn't know was an actor at first. I mean, I would hug this guy is absolutely great, a great person. Elvis Moscalo. He is an up and coming. You're going to see him in some great movies. The last one that he was in was, I believe, Godfather of Harlem. He played a lot of other medium-sized movies. But I want to see him succeed because not only is he a talented actor, but he is a down-to-earth great guy. I mean, last time I seen him was on Broadway. He jumped out of his car. Hey, Rob, there's no ego about him. There's no I'm better than thou. There's this guy, Elvis Nostello, just a great human being. And I'm sure there are some others that I met. Ran into the guy from Slick from A Bronx Tale in Lower East Side in Manhattan. Well, Manhattan, you're going to run into them. So yeah, I'm sure there are a few that I've forgotten about, but those are the main ones.
It's funny. You remind me about going to Manhattan. I went down. There's a network called Manhattan Neighborhood of Broadcasting,
Okay.
and they're like, I think they're like on Channel 2. Don't ask me how they're on Channel 2, because Channel 2 is, I think, CBS, but they're
Okay.
not CBS, so I don't know how the channels in the city work. I haven't been there in a long time. Not the point. But the point is, yeah, I was invited to go down to be interviewed on public access. And then I was like, okay, we're in here in Manhattan. And then, well, I'm also down there. There's also another network, and not the Bronx, it was in Brooklyn. And don't worry, I have that effect on people. There's another network, in Brooklyn. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, while we're down here, the Express and kill two birds with one stone. So as I was in Manhattan, my friend Howie said it's an extra $50. I said, fine. If I'm on TV 2 times in one day, that's a plus for me. So we traveled from Manhattan to Brooklyn. And when there's a question I want to ask you, or the reason I'm bringing this up, have you ever walked into a situation where there were so many red flags going off saying, get the hell out of here, but you ignored them and say, well, I'm here, I might as well make the best of it? Have you ever walked into that kind of situation?
Well, okay. So I grew up in East Harlem, New York. so there were plenty of those situations. Yeah. Let me. I could just mention like 1,000 off the top of my head. Um, uh, but um, but yeah. And
Well, let me ask
I
you
guess
this. Was there ever like a time where you were in a situation you couldn't get out of, but to make yourself better, you were making excuses to try to make the conversation go?
make excuses to try to make the conversation go.
I'll give you an example. This guy, I was fooled. I met this guy on LinkedIn, and I was like, okay, he has his own studio. He has, his own channel. First off, well, it was a red flag. He was waiting for me on the street, number one. And number two, he didn't have a lot of teeth. And I'm like, okay, he might have gotten into a fight. Don't judge a book by its cover. Could have gotten in a fight. Maybe he hasn't have money for a dentist. But I'm thinking to myself, if you're on TV, you shouldn't look like you're in a freaking boxing match. And then I was like, okay. Then he said, we're not going to use the studio. We're going to sit on the sidewalk and we're going to be interviewed. That was red flag number two. It's like,
Definitely.
you told me to travel 100 miles just to be interviewed on the sidewalk. And when I mentioned, can we go into the studio, you said, no, they're too busy. So I felt like I was obligated because I was like, you know what, I wasted an extra $50 to get here. Might as well. The whole thing reeked, and I said uncensored, the whole thing reeked of shit. Let's say, I got my hopes up saying, why couldn't it be two great studios? And when you look at a gifted horse, you never look at a gifted horse in the mouth. You never take things for granted. On that day, I kind of took things for granted, and luckily one thing worked out. The other one was a friggin' disaster. But that's a learning experience. So that's how I'm asking you is, have you ever been in that situation where not make excuses, but you try to look on the positive side?
I there are guidelines that I use prior or during communication with someone when I initially make communication. First off, I prefer any things that I do, purchases that I make, services that I purchase. I usually prefer to do it by networking. So there's always a referral involved. Okay, and like yourself, I also well, actually maybe as of recently have gotten a lot of Facebook requests, LinkedIn requests, and afterwards the person will usually try and hit me up for well, have you invested in crypto, which I'm sure you've had quite a few times, or send me $1,000, $500 through Cash App, and you're going to get 20,000. And I always look for things like how big is their network. If it's not something that's a referral situation, I want to see the network size. I want to see comments. Even when I do something as simple as purchasing headshots, depending on the area I'm at, I'll look at Google reviews. So I'm always doing my homework, and being from the neighborhood that I am, being from New York and being from East Harlem, I'm a little bit more cynical about things. I'm pretty quick to cut people off. Also, just because I'm not young, I'm kind of old. I've seen it all.
Well, I want to ask you something. I'm going to pass it over to you with the last 8 minutes. Was there anything you wanted to talk about? Anything you want to promote? And a new segment I want to talk about is no bullshit. So I want you to be brutally honest, not just to me, but anyone who's watching this. I want you to be brutally honest. When I first approached you to be a guest on my show, what was your first reaction?
My first reaction was do my homework, which is what I did. I looked at your history. I looked at your videos. I tried to look for angles. What's his angle in this? Didn't see any angles outside of what you already told me about yourself, your goals, I didn't see anywhere where I can get bit. I'm always willing to try something new, and this is really new to me. I've never done one of these before. So there's no downside to it. I haven't seen any downside. I haven't seen a red flag yet.
No, I appreciate that. For my talk show, everyone's like, "Oh, why you dress like this?" And I'm like, because it's professional. This is what I want to do to the day I'm 6 feet under. A lot of people, my friend Scotty, who's a former wrestler, he likes to joke and say, Keith, you missed the boom of the whole podcast thing. And what's your gimmick? What's your angle? Because everyone who shows their face on camera has an angle. Either you're a wrestler, either you're a writer, either you're a broadcast announcer. For me, my angle is I have a disability, and I'm going to show you with a disability, I can still amount to something. That's not like a gimmick. That's not like a mask I'm wearing. I'm trying to be original, if that makes any sense.
No, you are, and let me tell you where your blessing lies. And I learned this a long time ago. Someone once told me, Rob, do what you want, and the money will come later. Now, I did that, and it worked out, because whether I am working in IT or acting, it's not work for me. It's fun. So I'm blessed, and I get money. It's amazing. I'm happy. So that was one of the best pieces of advice I ever had as a little kid. I can't tell you how many friends. Now, I've got a lot of very successful friends, especially from Brooklyn Technical High School. I mean, these guys just off the chart. But some of them, and I love them all. I'm very selective about my group of friends. Some of them are not happy in the field that they're in. They make a lot of money, and my grandmother told me the secret to happiness. This is going to be my highlight of this whole thing. Money doesn't make you happy. You want to know the secret to happiness? You want to know what makes you happy?
What's that?
Happiness. Like the best kept secret my grandmother ever had. And I use that all the time. She told me so many things. Robert, don't let your things own you. You need to own your things. She just my grandmother, Carmela, rest her soul, greatest human being on earth. But so I see what you're doing as something that makes you happy. Who the hell cares what anyone says? You're happy doing it. Do it. I think you're really successful at it. And also, I'm impressed. Now, I'm glad I didn't tell you the company that I work for, because I don't want my job position threatened by you, because I see how good you are with the networking.
No, I agree. You know, my brother likes to tease me, and it's like, oh, you've been doing this for 9.5 years. If it hasn't happened yet, it's never going to. And when I hear shit like that, it just proves a point. Do what makes you happy. And I said to my dad, I will do it until it's not fun anymore. Because you go to any job, you know, even if you hate the job, it's your negative energy until your negative outlook. You walk in, and as long as you're able to make jokes, have fun, express yourself, and you be professional, of course, that's the biggest thing. You have to be professional. But the biggest thing is, as long as you're able to enjoy yourself, you're not holding a gun to your head. And, you know, I know that's a horrible metaphor, but when it gets to the point of, you know, punch in, punch out, I hate it here, you know, my life is horrible, that's where the downward spiral begins of saying, you know what, if you can look at yourself in the reflection of a mirror and smile, you're doing something right. The problem begins if you can't look at yourself in the mirror. You have to change something about yourself. Right.
Agreed.
But so
I mean, I'm blessed, and you're blessed.
No, I appreciate that. Now, with the last 2 minutes, was there anything you want to talk about? Anything you want to ask me? This is your time.
No. I think. Okay. Also, this interview / conversation was very well organized. You led it very well, and yes, you led it. And I really appreciate that, Keith. You know, I'm glad that I did this. And my gut feeling was go with it, with you. But anyway, so we're expecting the release of Mob Humor July 4th, 2023, and let's just pray that it will become what I believe it will become. And yeah, that. Do you have any more questions for me, Keith?
No, I have a couple questions for you off the air, but for our fans and listeners, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest. I'm looking forward to part 2. For our fans, if you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all social medias, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Me and my friend Rob will interact with it. That's the new thing on the KeithAndrew Network. For our interviews, these are like, okay, we did an interview, see you later. But now we're both tagged into it. We like to interact with the fan base, and they can leave us ideas and subjects or comments, so the next time we do an episode, we can answer those questions. Well, with that being said, it was a real honor, and I'm really thankful for this opportunity.